Faith is a conceived-for-television, feature-length screenplay, written by Marvin D. Bryson. The script was entered into the 2017 TV1 ABFF Screenplay Competition. Genre: spiritual family drama. Locale: urban center. Logline: a star volleyball player's dream. Her mother's faith. Synopsis: Faith Irving is a high school senior that's a triple threat. She's smart, beautiful, and athletic. When her mother dies suddenly from a heart attack, Faith is unwittingly left by her brother and dad to deal with things on her own, because they are too caught up in their own interpersonal skirmishes to notice that Faith is slowly spiraling out of control. The following is the TV1 ABFF judges' feedback.
This is a good script. It is a couple of polished drafts away from being great, but the potential is there if the writer is willing to do the work necessary to get it there. Story: the story was interesting and fairly original. A few of the character arcs and subplots were underdeveloped or left unresolved, but for the most part the story was solid. Overtly absent were clear character transitions. These are the key moments when each character faces a pivotal life moment that motivates them to change their beliefs or behavior. Below are some examples. Faith, originally described as a strong, self-sufficient and confident character, she seemed to face most of her challenges by crying and needing to lean on others for emotional support. This doesn't fit. The jump forward in Act 3 also omitted what was sure to be a very trying, physically and emotionally draining rehab period for her to get into shape for her scholarship. In fact, one of the last scenes before the time jump was of her crying about how her life was all falling apart. So how did she go from being reduced to tears to being a superwoman? This reader thought that there were some deleted pages. What happened to motivate the change? James, similarly, before the time jump in Act 3, he was dead set against Faith going to state and equally set against Stephen opening his own business. But after the time jump, he was fine with both. What happened that we didn't see? Kenny, we assumed that seeing Darren killed in the stick-up was the event that propelled him to change his ways, but there was no further follow-up or follow-through. But for Kenny's character, this was woefully insufficient. Are we to believe from this that crime does pay? The idea that Kenny could just get away with felony murder doesn't fit this uplifting and positive story at all. Him being saved at church is cliched and inadequate. It feels like a band-aid on an amputation. Nope. Dialogue: the biggest thing holding this script back is the dialogue. Admittedly, dialogue is the hardest thing to get right in screenwriting. But it's worth the effort. The biggest problem with the dialogue in this script is the chit-chat. There are probably 5 to 8 pages worth, and maybe more, of chit-chat in the script. Pages that could be better used in character development. Start scenes in the middle. In a tight, well-written script, you will never see a ringing phone. Why? The reason is simple: if you show a phone ringing, someone has to answer it. How do people answer the phone? They say hello. Then what happens? Well, chit-chat happens. Hi. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. My arthritis is acting up the rain, you know? Yeah. Sorry to hear that. How's Penny, etc. Chit-chat. Completely unnecessary and wasteful. Get to the point of the conversation right at the beginning of the scene. Same rules apply for regular dialogue. You don't need to show people walking into the room. They can already be there, in the middle of their conversation when you open the scene. The following excerpt from the script is an example of an entire scene of chit-chat. Int. Mary's hair salon continuous. As Nancy and Faith enter, Ms. Mary is genuinely surprised. Ms. Mary: well, look at you too. Faith is noticeably more upbeat. Faith: hey, Grandma. The two hug. As Ms. Mary and Faith unlock, Nancy plants a peck on her mother's cheek. Ms. Mary: so, tell me something good. Faith. Dad has agreed with my going to state. If I pass my physical next week. Ms. Mary. Miracles never cease. Nancy. Get out of town. Faith continued. Yep. It's absolutely true. Nancy. Well, my news isn't so profound or life-changing. I'm just here to get my nails and bunions fresh. Marvin and I have a hot date tonight. Ms. Mary. Sweetheart. That is profound. About time you put some effort into keeping a man off our ladies enjoying each other. That's almost an entire page of unnecessary chit-chat. The only piece of news is that James agreed to support Faith's application to state. But you already showed James doing that. So why do you need an entire page of chit-chat to show the other characters finding out? It doesn't move the story forward at all. And nothing new is revealed about any of the characters. Completely wasted page. If you go through the script and eliminate all of the chit-chat and unnecessary dialogue, you may find that you have another 15 pages of script. Read dialogue out loud. There's a big difference between writing dialogue and the way people actually talk with one another. It's very difficult to determine this if you do not read your dialogue out loud. Your mind tells you that the dialogue looks fine on the page and it does you used to reading dialogue for typos and grammar, but not for how people really talk.
Feedback. It's always tough to get feedback in notes. You want to embrace the positive ones and, kind of scratch your head, just not feel good about the negative ones. But the negative ones are what's going to help you grow. And so what I got from this particular piece of feedback, first and foremost, was I needed to tighten up my character transitions. As a film editor and a songwriter and all these things before I started screenwriting, I still have a lot of work to do with regard to, making clear transitions, as I said, subplots and time jumps and things like that. And I proofread completely differently now. I use a text-to-speech program and essentially edit and proofread scene by scene by hearing it through somebody else's voice. And it's really totally changed. It's totally changed the way I work. I have to disagree with the reader's take on Faith crying. It's clear, or maybe it's not clear, but to me it seems like this guy's never been around a girl that's lost her mom or had a good friend that lost his dad. I mean, people fall apart, they cry all the time for like no particular reason. So, and that's the thing about notes. I mean, you can either accept them or not accept them, particularly when the person giving you notes really has no bearing on the project per se, as it's going. You're going to have to fight for your vision sometime, and that's one that I'll look at maybe, making less of, but I'm not taking it all the way out because it's too real. Also, the second example you used in Mary's hair salon, I have to disagree also that it didn't move the story forward. And plus, a lot of people talk. A lot of dialogue is chit-chat. Chit-chat is how people communicate. So that's another thing we don't necessarily see eye to eye on. But I do agree that I could, definitely tighten some scenes up with the dialogue. But I think what he missed primarily, the biggest thing was the reason Miss Mary was surprised. She was surprised to see her granddaughter and her daughter getting along, because her daughter literally had nothing to do with her niece, or her daughter really had nothing to do with her granddaughter, who is her niece, before her mom died. So there was no guarantee that they were going to get together. And since this was toward the end of the show, I wanted to show that Faith and her Aunt Nancy had a good relationship. And then also, I have to disagree that it didn't move the story for it either, because it tied up a lot of Nancy's things. Particularly, again, Aunt Nancy has issues. And her biggest thing was, she never felt like she had to work for a man. But over the course of her story, she's developed a relationship with this guy named Marvin, and she really, really, really is working hard to make this relationship work, which is fundamentally different for her. So, but like I say, he probably read the script once and just did the notes and things like that. Also, I don't really understand the whole, I get starting scenes in the middle, but sometimes you got to start things at the beginning so readers know where they are. Just because you put in a script cut to beauty shop and you pick up the middle of the scene. Again, I'll go back to saying that the reason I wrote the scene like I wrote was to demonstrate the change in Aunt Nancy and Faith's relationship and the change in Aunt Nancy's attitude toward men. So I guess that got missed. And the whole thing, like, him saying you'll never see a scene start on a telephone. To me, that's like saying you'll never see a scene start on a clock. I've seen many scenes in many movies start on clocks and telephones. So, again, that's something else I disagree with too. But I can understand, it might be something to remove from the script. So I'll definitely take that under advisement. And lastly, the two things that really hit home for me was my lack of depth as far as Kenny's change and my lack of depth showing Faith's rehab process. I left a lot of things off the script, but there's the script I actually sent him was like 84 pages. So I'm really thinking, when I do a rewrite, or if and when I do a rewrite of it, it'd be more like 90, 95, maybe 100 pages. And it'd definitely be different because I write differently now. As I was saying, I use a text-to-speech program to proofread everything. So I proofread and edit anything I write. If it's a script, I do it scene by scene. If it's an essay or a novel, I do it paragraph by paragraph, just to see that it flows right and it reads the way I want it to read. So I hope you found this particular analysis and this whole thing with the script useful. And so at the end of the day, that's it. So I hope all is well. Peace.